For those of you who are joining us now, this is the Basalt Regional Library. We're hosting a town hall meeting about the Lake Christine burn area, almost on the second anniversary of the fire. We have tonight with us several members of our government and organizations that are working hard to restore the area, and we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. So please bear with us. This town hall is also being recorded and will be posted on the Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers website, as well as the Basalt Regional Library website. And I think that we'll get going. I'm Kathy Click. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Basalt Regional Library. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're co-hosting this event with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, the town hall discussion about the Lake Christine burn area. I'd like to introduce our speakers and co-hosts tonight. Rebecca Schild, Executive Director of Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, Ryan Mahoney, Town Manager of the Town of Basalt, Chad Rudo with Roaring Fork Conservancy, and Darren Chacon from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And they'll be presenting and sharing slides tonight. We'll be talking about the fire, the restoration area projects. And if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat below, and we'll get to them after the presentations. So thank you all for joining us. This will be recorded and posted on our website at the library and Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers website as well. Brian, would you like to go first?
Sure, sounds good. I'm going to share my screen. And everybody can see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So yeah, I think I wanted to start off with just acknowledging the fact that all of the post-fire mitigation was really a partnership. There were a lot of different agencies, nonprofits, government agencies that were involved. So without all of that, coordination, it would have been really a lot more difficult. And I have to acknowledge also that leading up to the fire, our agencies such as fire, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the counties, they have done a tremendous amount of coordination, preparing themselves really for a response to an issue like a wildfire. So I really don't think it would have gone as well without a lot of that lead up preparation. So but tonight we're going to talk about what we did after the fire. And so a few of the agencies, the town, Eagle County, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the National Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, immediately began thinking about the flooding that we heard is almost imminent after a fire. Burn scars, I guess, tend to attract weather. And so almost immediately, we were in contact with NRCS. They came up with some mitigation measures, and we had access to what they call emergency watershed protection money through the federal government. And so the town took the lead on that effort, basically being a pass-through organization for the money. And we worked with an outside engineering firm, SGM, to help design these projects. And this is one of the most interesting projects I've been on, because most of the time with government, you're going through extended processes, public outreach, those kind of things. It was fast and furious. And so, you're moving as quickly as you can. And we had actually started the mitigation when we had a flood that occurred up above town here and did do some damage to buildings. Luckily, it was fairly minor, but the mitigation that was in place worked, and it really saved a lot from doing more damage. And so one of the things that we worked on, and I'll get to the slides, the scope was pretty big on this EWP project. So it went from North Basalt Mountain over to Elgibel, over into above the tree farm, along Two Rivers Road, and into the downtown area. And so a few of the slides here will show you what kind, let's see, how do I advance this here? Sorry, it doesn't seem, oh, there we go. Sorry. So as I said, some of it's somewhat rudimentary. So what you see here, these are called trash racks. And essentially we're putting those at the bottom of drainages, because when you have debris flow, the most important thing, you want that water to keep flowing through, and these trash racks are designed to catch rocks, limbs, debris, so that you can keep flowing water and it doesn't begin to back up. So you can see they've got some of these concrete blocks and racks that can help to hold back some of the debris. This is one of the debris basins that we built up above town in the downtown area. And what you see here is post-flood. And on the left-hand side, that is all ash and debris that would have otherwise gone down into the Old Town area. And I don't know that this picture quite does it justice. That's about an acre in size. And it is probably at the deepest 6-8 feet deep, full of debris. So you can imagine if that would have come down into town. So we were really happy that was it. This is a lower basin that was created just over an Elgibel above the trailer park that exists over there. And can you see my cursor? Can you see that moving? No, okay. Well, if you can see that white van, just beyond that is the trailer park. So we got this basin in, and then after the basin was in, this is actually part of the seeding project that we did with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, and I won't talk too much about that because I'm sure they will. But after the fact, you want to get some of the native plants back into that area. And then there was also an upper basin that was created that protected another part of the trailer park in there. And then we went back and reseeded that as well. And then after that was completed, we started thinking about wildfire mitigation. And so again, partnered with the fire district. We partnered with Eagle County, Eric Lovegren, who's their wildfire specialist. We partnered with the state forestry. And the first thing that we did was to do mitigation in the Old Town area. And we went and did door hangers. The fire district was out doing inspections. And then we hauled off limbs, chipped them, got them out of there. This project that you see here was actually with the Swift crew. The Swift crew, they're actually inmates at the Rifle Correctional Facility that are trained in wildland fire and mitigation.
Ryan, we're not seeing the slides advance.
Oh,
there you go.
Can you see that now?
The fire truck.
Yes.
Thank
Great.
you.
So, so this is the Swift crew, as I was saying, and they did a demonstration project on the hillside adjacent to Town Hall. There was tons of debris down there, and had somebody, thrown out a cigarette, or you had some spark for some reason, that could have just climbed right up that hill. And so we also wanted to do that to be able to show people that wildfire mitigation isn't necessarily clear cutting. You do it in sort of this mosaic pattern that actually brings sunlight down onto the floor of the the ground surrounding the trees and whatnot, and brings back a lot of grasses and wildflowers and those kind of things. Subsequent to that, we've also used the same crew around our water plant to mitigate there. And we've also done our river park. This summer, we brought them back to do Ponderosa Park, which is down by the subway, that county building, the Roaring Fork Apartments, and really did a lot of work in there. So that's really all I have. I'll stop sharing, but again, I think that what we learned is you're not going to mitigate for these things overnight, but if you keep chipping away at it over time, then I think you begin to make some real progress. And so, I think with these partnerships, they're just invaluable. And I think we're on down the road with making pretty good progress. So thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Chad from the Roaring Fork Conservancy.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Great. My name is Chad Rudo. I am the Water Quality Program Manager for Roaring Fork Conservancy. And just in case there's some on the meeting here that may not know who we are, we're the watershed organization for the entire Roaring Fork watershed, and just happen to be based right here in Basalt. As a matter of fact, we had just moved into our new building about a week prior to when the fire broke out, and it's quite close to where the fire started. So we're kind of holding our breath a little bit on that one. But I think what I'm going to do is just talk through some of the activities that Roaring Fork Conservancy has been involved in since the fire, and talk a little bit from kind of the water aspects, the water side of things. So really some of our heaviest involvement was in that first year right after the fire happened, and in a couple of different ways. We worked with a number of the groups that are on the call here today, as well as some others, to host a community meeting that was a post-fire panel to try and help inform people of what had happened and what the impacts might be and what to expect and how to plan moving forward. So that was kind of on the community outreach side of things. A little bit more internal, we were asked by the U.S. Forest Service to sort of lead a technical advisory group to discuss the fire. And this was a very large group. We had representatives from 2 counties, Eagle and Garfield County, the town of Basalt, Parks and Wildlife, U.S. Forest Service, a number of nonprofit organizations. And really what this technical advisory group was doing was just getting together and having the ability to kind of work together and communicate together to discuss sort of the effects of the fire, the impacts, and plans moving forward. So just kind of a coordination sort of event to make sure that everybody knew what all these other groups were all working on. So that really, that group kind of worked together off and on for about the first year after the fire. And then another kind of interesting piece that we were involved in fairly soon after the fire happened was working with the Colorado River District and RWAPA, that's the Rudai Water and Power Authority, to really talk about how water was being allocated and released from Rudai, and kind of worked with both of those agencies to try and make sure those releases were benefiting flows of the river, especially at a time when we were maybe concerned about impacts from the fire reaching the river, or mud events like Ryan mentioned. We did have that one event that reached the river. And so we tried to really work to make sure we could maximize the amount of water being released from Rudai to provide somewhat of a increase in flows to help kind of mitigate any of those potential impacts. So that was something that happened again in that first year after the fire, going right from that point. Then I guess I'll also mention that we have participated and partnered quite a bit with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers on a number of the volunteer restoration type projects. And we've worked both in the work side of things, getting volunteers together, as well as trying to help with some of the education and outreach for that. I'm sure Becca will have a lot more to talk about that. So I'll just kind of mention our partnership with them on that. And I think the final thing I might mention, since we're the water organization, is water quality monitoring. We have regular baseline monitoring sites that we felt like did a decent job of sort of bracketing where the fire had happened and where we could keep an eye on water quality in relationship to the fire. And it just happens that we also have been working on a 6-year study on Cattle Creek, and the upper reaches of Cattle Creek are on the backside of Basalt Mountain, where there was a significant portion of burn area. And although the focus of that study wasn't on the fire, it turned out to be quite beneficial as another way to keep an eye on a stream in the area. And I will say, from all of the monitoring that we've been doing, both the baseline and our Cattle Creek study, we've really felt pretty lucky because we haven't seen any major impacts from the fire. We kind of leading after the fire, we had sort of minimal monsoon rains, and although 2019 was a good snow year, the snow melt was kind of slow and gradual, which is what we wanted to see. So we really feel like we kind of dodged a bullet a little bit and haven't seen a lot of major water quality impacts so far anyway, post fire. So I think that's kind of a quick rundown of what we've been doing, and we will plan to continue moving forward with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers and CPW and any other groups, Town of Basalt, on future projects as we move ahead.
Thank you, Chad. Next up is Darren Chacon from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, participants that are here. Appreciate it. Kathy, can you go ahead and put up my little slides that I showed you? So just bring it out. When this all started, there was a task force that was put together to look at some of the concerns, including the range and certain projects that CPW partnered with other agencies and other organizations that we could do to do fire mitigation. There was a list of projects that were brought together with this task force, and we tried to do kind of like a checklist. We do understand that fire mitigation isn't just going to end after 2 or 3 years. Our take is it's going to be a continued effort. It's going to be several years from now that we're going to be working on it. It's not going to happen overnight. If you look at, I'll go right here just to our fire recovery efforts as to date. Initially, right after that fire, as soon as we could get up there and it was safe, CPW staff, we had mechanically seeded 450 acres up there. Later the following year, we did aerial seeding of 625 acres. We worked with the Town of Basalt, and as Ryan was talking about the check dams and check basins, we're given materials for that. We built a bunch of those. We cleaned out some, and it's ongoing. Just because they're there, we just don't leave them. We kind of go back, we evaluate and see what they're doing. If we can make them more efficient, our staff, we go in there with equipment, clean them out, that sort of thing. Later, the following year, or later that summer, we did hand seeding of 70 acres. Again, we had volunteers that were up there, and like most of you know, that's a lot of boots on the ground. It's not even terrain. A lot of time up hiking, hot weather, that sort of thing. It was very appreciative. And then we had a volunteer day later that summer, and working with the RFOV, that 250 volunteers. It was a great day. We were up there. We covered a lot of ground, put down a lot of seed. And when some of the plants that we that we put down, we're not gonna see the effects right away. Just now we're starting to see it, because some of the forbs and stuff, they're starting to come up now. So again, this fire mitigation, it's not you flip the light switch and hey, everything's green and we're good. We understand it's an ongoing process, and that's what's happening with this seeding from 2019. So we're really thankful with that. We've continued our efforts to do fire mitigation. We've worked with the chief, Thompson. We're working on a fire break around the range. we're working on a green belt. And part of that is that if a fire, heaven forbid, we don't want this ever to happen again, something below the range, there's a green belt that is planned that will hopefully stop the fire from increasing going up. We've been cleaning around the range. We've been trying to do various projects there where we don't want to have another fire like this ever again. So we rebuilt up berms. We've got rid of vegetation around, as much vegetation as we can. It's still an ongoing process. We've put down material on the shooting range that reduces the amount of vegetation that grows, so we don't have fire sparking there. Just like you say, right there's the green belt. Like working with Chief Thompson, those were the recommendations. Oop. So those are some of the things we've been doing. We've also been working on a big irrigation project so that we can get water and irrigate our upper fields. What we saw the night of the fire, and I actually witnessed this, where we had water set for irrigation, the fire did not cross. The upper fields that weren't irrigated at the time, we could watch the fire move steadily up the hill. So our plan is, if we increase and we're more efficient with our irrigation, we can get more of the fields irrigated. And if something like this ever happens, whether a lightning strike or anything like that, we can hopefully some of that irrigation projects that we're doing will also slow a fire down. One of the things we're doing is we're experimenting with different types of food plots in the area. It is a wildlife area, so we're managing it that way. And maybe with some of that down the road or something, it may involve maybe trying to reduce public usage in certain areas so that we can increase our, we have better habitat for wildlife. Those are some of the plans. If you look at slide 6, this is part of the green belt that we built. We were back up again with our heavy equipment this year that we winded out. Chief Thompson was up there. He was really happy with the way it's looking. Future plans are to continue that along other parts of the state wildlife area. So there's still a lot of work to do. Like I said, it's going to be several years down the road. I don't think we'll say we're ever truly done. Just like we've seen in some of the Waldo fire there in Colorado Springs, 10 years after, they're still having flooding issues. So CPW, we're going to do as much as we can to prevent that, so it doesn't impact our neighbors downhill. Well, just kind of short and sweet. That's just kind of where we're at right now with our ongoing fire mitigation.
Thank you, Darren. Becca, are you back with us?
I'm here. Thank you for your flexibility. I will share my screen. Great. Can everyone see that? Great. Hi, I'm Becca Schild. I'm the Executive Director of Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers. And we are a nonprofit that has been mentioned by all of our partners here, based in Basalt as well. So I wasn't actually there. Actually, I feel like you can speak more to the trauma, but our offices are in downtown. And I think just the fire encroaching on the office was a pretty significant event for our staff as well. So our organization promotes stewardship of our public lands by engaging a diverse community in education, restoration, and conservation. And this is our 26th year. And in that time, we've completed, almost 700 stewardship projects across our service area, contributed over $5 million in volunteer labor, and recorded 190,000 in volunteer hours. And then we have done a handful of other projects in terms of the trails and restorations that we work on in our region. And so we like to use the term civic stewardship, where members of our community can be active participants in the health of our shared outdoors. And so we just completed a new strategic plan and identified 4 pillars of our goals and our work. And it's really land, stewardship, community, and education. And so what these kind of frame all of our programs and activities, and I'll show you how they play out in our work on the Lake Christine fire. So just as a reminder, I don't know if you all need to be reminded, but the fire started in July 2018. It burned just over 12,000 acres from July 3rd to September 4th. Really excellent job on the part of the firefighters, in that there really is only one serious injury and only a few structures were burned. But as you can see with the map, it came so close to the neighboring communities and towns. And so I think, wildfire is a natural component of our Western landscapes, but when it comes this close to, our communities, it really is a traumatic event, and kind of garners a lot of emotions from the community, as you can imagine. So we try to engage, why engage our community in fire restoration? And, there's a lot of research out there, and then a lot of this is somewhat intuitive, but by getting volunteers out there, we first and foremost can add capacity to land managers. And I think that Darren said that, really well, where, in places where they can't bring machines, there are restrictions, or just they have limited staff capacity, we can get 250, 300 volunteers out there on a day and get a lot of work done. So that's kind of the first layer, but I think that the more impactful, and some of the reasons that I'm passionate about this work, is that it really helps everyone to develop a shared understanding about the problem and solutions. And with wildfire especially, there's a lot of perspectives on wildfire and its recovery. And so by getting people out on the land and working hand in hand with our partners and with land managers, there can just be a dialogue, and we can increase public understanding of just this natural process that we live with. And then from that, the hope is that we can actually build support, buy-in, and trust in land manager decisions. And oftentimes land managers are making decisions that are not always immediately obvious to the public, but are guided by their management protocol or their management priorities, or other ecological reasons that maybe the public doesn't fully understand. So by helping engage them in that fire restoration project, or that fire restoration process, we can kind of bridge that gap. And Ryan mentioned this as well, people want to get involved, and there just needs to be an infrastructure of social capital and collaboration in order to get some of these big projects done. And so it can kind of build the fabric of our community, so that not only can we respond to the fire, but we can actually have a really good and strong foundation to approach future fire mitigation, future natural disasters, and other types of challenges that our community will face. And then from a personal perspective, just getting out there on the land and seeing the natural recovery as well as assisting in the recovery can be a really healing and restorative process for people who have been traumatized by the event. So as has already been mentioned, we in 2019 formed a loose partnership with agencies, the town of Basalt, and several other nonprofits to commit to doing post-fire restoration in Lake Christine for at least several years, if not 10 years. As Darren mentioned, it will be a long-term process. So these are all of our partners. And RFOV has 4 main programs that we bring the community out to the Lake Christine area. So the first and probably the most visible is to have public and group projects. So we'll have large community events where we bring anyone who's interested in volunteering out to do one day on the land, but we also work with private groups to create custom volunteer opportunities for them, and sometimes we bring them to the Lake Christine area as well. We've started a Tour the Trails hike series, and we have done informational and creative hikes in different areas. And so last year, this is an image of participants at the top of one of the hills, kind of imagining the landscape as it was pre-fire, and then imagining the landscape 10 years post-fire. And so trying to engage in some creative imagination around what this fire has done to the landscape. And we'll be doing another hike again this year. We have a very active Young Stewards program where we bring students kindergarten through high school out and do service projects, and then also educational projects. And so we work with a variety of different schools as well as other organizations, like the Buddy Program and other organizations serving youth, and help match them to a project that best fits their educational goals. And then similar to what Chad said, we are doing community outreach, such as this town hall, as well as other informational materials so that we can develop that shared understanding. So in the 2 field seasons since the fire has happened, we've contributed just over 1,500 hours of community stewardship just on Lake Christine alone. And I wasn't present for the July 2019 reseeding event, but what I heard is it was just this amazing moment in time when the town just came together and showed up, and everyone's kind of walking the hillsides, reseeding, and then celebrating over food afterwards. And so we got a lot of work done, and we also, like I mentioned, came together as a community to kind of heal from that event. So in 2021, our tagline for the year is renewing landscape and community through collective action, and we're doing that still at the Lake Christine area, but also in Glenwood Canyon from the Grizzly Creek fire. So we're just learning some of this as well. This wasn't necessarily a component of RFOV's expertise, so we're learning along the way, but we see that there's a need. And so coming up on July 11th, we're combining a hike with a restoration project where we'll mostly be doing invasive species removal, primarily thistle removal. So participants will spend the morning with our partners doing some modules and learning just about the natural recovery and the ecology of the area and the watershed impacts as well. And then they'll go out and they will collect invasive species. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this year. So if you have any questions or just want to learn more, please contact me or visit our website. And I will stop sharing if let's see, stop share. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. So I think we have a couple of people here with us. I have no questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions for any of our land managers, volunteer organizations, or for the town?
I have a question for Darren. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Darren, you mentioned seeding. What type of seeding did you do?
And I can't tell you the exact seed mix. We have a one of our biologists in the Glenwood or in the Grand Junction area. He came up, took a site visit of the area, looked at the soils, and he gave, man, you know, I really wish I could tell you what we put down. It was a mixture of grasses, forbs, and it was picked with the benefit to benefit wildlife. And then also some of them were fast growing so that it would stabilize soil. But our seed mix was leaning more towards the wildlife habitat.
Okay. Yeah,
but-
ground cover.
Right.
Type. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'm curious about what you expect the forest to look like over the next 10 years or maybe 25 years. Do you feel like it will pretty much restore itself the way that it was, or are there climate change issues that we're taking into consideration? What are your expectations up there? Anybody?
I can maybe answer a little bit of that. We're hoping that now with the fire, we actually removed a lot of pinyon juniper. From a wildlife standpoint, it doesn't offer that much benefit. The understory is more beneficial, so that if we want to say that's winter, we say that's winter range up there. Now with the removal of a pinyon juniper, now the forbs, the understory is able to grow, and that's a bigger benefit for wildlife. While pinyon juniper does offer some thermal cover in the winter and the summer, that forage base is really important. So I think maybe in the long run, it's going to be even more beneficial for wildlife than what we started with.
So do you see a fir tree renewal up there or an aspen forest?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Do you see more of a fir tree renewal up there, or do you think the aspens will repopulate up there?
Not so much, the aspens aren't so much on our property, that's more on the Forest Service. What we had was the pinyon juniper complex and the oak brush, and the oak brush is actually doing well. I would have to say maybe 2-3 weeks after the fire, when we were up there reseeding, in certain areas, the oak brush had already taken off. And that's a great benefit to deer and elk, because the tender shoots that come up, that's what they want to utilize. So that should be good. We're pretty excited about that. I just got this handed to me. This was the reseeding that we did on basalt. So we had Wyoming big sage, we had mountain big sage, white stem rubber rabbit brush, and mountain mahogany. And all those are important forbs for wildlife. Also, we had antelope bitter brush, mutton grass, Palmer pestamon, prairie June grass. And then also, like I said, we did some of those check dams, that sort of thing. So that, going back to your question, Kirk, that was the seed base that we used.
Brian, I keep getting flood alert warnings, which I mostly assume are for the Grizzly Creek fire, but how stable do you think that the Lake Christine burn area is at this time? And what kind of, how worried are you about another big flow incident like we had in 2018?
That's a great question. We actually, the reason you're getting those notices is in part, the Grizzly Creek, but also one of the projects we did that I didn't mention is in cooperation with Eagle County, the fire district, town of Basalt, and then the National Weather Service. We've added 3 rain gauges that go up seasonally onto Basalt Mountain. And so the National Weather Service, based out of Grand Junction, they have sometimes trouble seeing, around the mountains and such. And so we really wanted to pinpoint Basalt Mountain. So if there was something coming or there was a storm sitting on top of it, we could give some advance warning to, the residents, so that, in the event of a serious debris flow, you'd have time to get out of your house and remain safe. We did go up there recently when we were, reinstalling those for the season. And, I got a report that the soils, particularly on the basalt side of the mountain, were really starting to show some recovery. The fire didn't burn as hard or as hot on this side. And so, that recovery time frame is going to be a little bit quicker than on the far north side of the fire. But the benefit there is just, basically allowing people to understand when a storm might be coming through. And now that we have all of the mitigation complete and 3 years under our belt post fire, we're hoping that, we're sort of out of the highest risk. The storm that did come and sit over the top of one portion of Basalt Mountain, they don't use this term that much anymore, but it was a 500-year storm. It was a tremendous amount of water that came around that you're not going to typically see, again in a lifetime. That being said, because it's a burn scar, that black soil can attract storms after a fire, and sometimes you do see those. But with that recovery, we're feeling cautiously optimistic that, especially for our more populated areas, that a debris flow is more remote at this point.
And can anyone speak to ongoing mitigation in town? I know the fire department has periodically in the springtime, they'll send out an announcement that they'll do fire mitigation at your home. And how important is that just going forward as far as wildfires are concerned? And what kind of programs are available to people at this point?
I can speak to that too. The town has been working, I mentioned a little bit where we were working with the Eagle County and then the Roaring Fork Fire Rescue, that they would go do the property inspections, and then people could cut their limbs and then, put them out on the street, and then we would pick them up and chip them, and then get them to the landfill where they get mulched. And so we will continue doing that. That's a free service. Eagle County did have some funds for grants, and people took advantage of those. And I think as we get more and more into the threat of wildfire in the West, I think that grant funds can become more readily available. And then I will say that, from the town's perspective, we're going to keep working on it. Annually, we'll provide that service. And, it's likely that I want to start aiming at different neighborhoods. I did, kind of concentrate on the neighborhood above town because that's, where the fire and the flooding had occurred. But I think it's important that we, kind of spread that around a bit. And we'll continue to work with those agencies on it.
So, Ryan, this is Daryl Walker. I just wanted to insert the work. I'm on the board at the Bassburg Townhomes up on top of the hill, and we got pretty close, scared a lot of people. The town came up and created the catch right above us, on the property, and did some work in our driveway and in the circle. So that was good. Let you know also we've created a landscape committee. Finally this year, we had a big roof project last year we didn't get to, so we're starting that now. And so I appreciate that. We've got a couple of inspections that we're looking at. We've hired Good Earth, I think is going to help us with landscape plan. So we're on our way, slowly but surely. So
that's great news.
I know you were interested in that, so I thought I'd just let you know we're getting there.
That's great. And I think that at that HOA level, I think that's a great way to be able to mitigate, lands beyond just a single home, and I think kind of be able to put that communication out to the fire district for an entire set of people, especially those that have open space around them. So kudos to you guys.
Well, we're not done yet.
Starting the discussion is
yeah, good for us. We got it started. That was probably harder than anything.
That's right.
And I had a question related to that, and maybe this is for Darren, but it sounds like some of the challenges of fire mitigation just are because it's crossing jurisdictional boundaries and also between private and public land. And so I'm curious if anyone knows how the Forest Service is addressing some of the mitigation work, because it sounds like CPW and obviously the town and fire district are doing some work, and but because it's right up against Forest Service lands as well, has there been an effort or a conversation there?
I've worked, I sit on another committee and I work with biologist Phil Nyland, and I know he's been tasked with trying to find funds and projects to do that on the Forest Service, and some of it does, they're our neighbor on the northern side. So I can't speak exactly what he's doing, but I know he's approached our committee for funds to help complete some of the projects, whether it's habitat, mechanical manipulation sort of things, or reseeding, weed spraying, that sort of thing. So I know it's on his radar. I just can't speak for what exactly he's doing. I know he's doing some stuff up a little bit farther up the frying pan, up around the toner area where the fire did, on the upper rim. It was up in there.
Thanks, Darren.
Well, I want to thank you all for for coming and participating in this conversation. Becca, you have the RFOB project up at Lake Christine Burn areas on July the 11th. And Chad, I'm sure you have upcoming projects for the Grizzly Creek area. And are you taking registrations for those?
I can mention quickly, yes, there's, and actually Becca can probably speak to it as well. There is a group that was put together really fairly quickly last year after the Grizzly Creek fire broke out, called the Glenwood Canyon Restoration Alliance. And just like this fire here was a real great partnership, that one is as well, with lots of different government entities and nonprofits, and I need to give credit to Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers as the spearhead for that. So yes, we've got a lot of community outreach and work projects going around that as well. And it's another great team effort. And I'm sure Becca can probably speak to what the next projects are coming up, but it's a variety of both work projects as well as educational activities. We've had educational hikes and some other town meetings similar to this. And so she can probably list what's coming up next. And we always funnel all of our registrations through Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers. So their website is kind of the place we send everyone.
And I'd like to say just really quickly, when we did the reseeding project in Elgibel, the Grizzly Creek Restoration Alliance, many of those folks who are residents down valley showed up to do the reseeding, which was really pretty awesome. So I certainly encourage us who live in the Basalt area to help down there when there are projects. That was really nice showing.
Thanks. I'll just piggyback on that. So we're trying to get people up into the high country as the heat comes our way. So we'll be back in Grizzly Creek on September 18th and then Hanging Lake on September 25th. And with the recent landslides, it remains to be seen what it's done to the trail infrastructure there. And we're also working with watershed groups just to better understand some of the impacts to the water. But I think, what is great about this is having these partnerships really helps promote learning. So we can take what was successful here with the Lake Christine fire and modify and adapt in Glenwood Canyon, knowing it's completely different landscape. But just building that capacity and experience to more effectively respond.
Well, thank you all for working together and for coming together tonight and having this conversation. As I mentioned earlier, it will be posted on the RFOB site and on the Basalt Regional Library site in the next couple of days. So happy 4th of July weekend, second anniversary. And thanks again to Ryan Mahoney from the town of Basalt, Chad Rudo from Roaring Fork Conservancy, Darren Chacon from CPW, and Rebecca Schild from Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good night.
Night.